Hello, my dear students. We are going to continue the discussion on nuclear terrorism, part 2. Okay, I hope you are staying safe inside home, and we all need to stay inside and not be around outside because this is going to continue for a while, and experts say to stay inside. So I'm staying inside and teaching the classes, and I hope you stay inside and listen to the lectures and stay healthy and safe. Okay, let's start the conversation on nuclear terrorism. Nuclear terrorism, I left you talking about, I didn't talk to you about flash X-ray machine. What's this? Write it down, flash X-ray machine. If you want to look at the image, you could Google and look at it, or you could look at it in my PowerPoint, which I'm sending you along with this video. Flash X-ray machine is a machine used to make sure, you know, the implosion device, right? The implosion device, like I demonstrated in the, that all the sides of the conventional bomb has to go off and squeeze the plutonium in the middle, and the plutonium then reaches criticality. So assume this marker is the material, and it gets squeezed, it reaches its supercriticality, and then it explodes. That's the implosion device which was dropped in Nagasaki. That's right. The same bomb, that bomb, in order to design that, countries need to have flash X-ray machine. Why do they need the flash X-ray machine for that? Well, remember, all sides have to squeeze at the same time. So that means these are called lenses, different lenses. So in a room, if you are sitting in a room, look up, down, left, right, and front and back. So there you have like 6 sides. All the 6 sides have to squeeze. Here, like 32 sides, all come and squeeze. When all sides have to come and squeeze at the same time, they all are lenses. The sides are called lenses. They are exploding, conventional bomb exploding same time to squeeze the nuclear material in the middle, which creates the nuclear explosion. So for that to be checked, whether all those conventional bombs, those lenses, are lenses, could be exploding in the same time, you need to check that using a flash X-ray, not with the nuclear material. No, just the conventional bombs, you tested whether they all could be exploded in the same time. That's an X-ray machine which is not available in countries which don't have access to nuclear technology. So it is controlled by countries like US, France, and UK, the countries which have the nuclear bomb. Others do not have access to it. In order to make a plutonium weapon, they need to have that. So terrorists, if they're trying to make a plutonium bomb, they wouldn't have access to those flash X-ray machines, which is a technology you need to create it, okay? And the next one is to learn, you need to use uranium-235 in a gun-type weapon, right? The gun-type weapon like this, you know that, and it goes and hits. We saw that. And for an implosion bomb, you need plutonium. If you put the reverse the materials in the different weapon, it won't work. It won't work. Okay? Why it won't work? Well, if you put a plutonium in a gun-type weapon, the plutonium is very highly radioactive. It will start the reaction even before you take it and drop it in the war zone. So that's risky. You could be exploded. And if you put the uranium in an implosion device, and it will not be working like the plutonium to reach the supercriticality when it's squeezed. So if you are a terrorist, usually they go for the gun type because it's a simpler device. It doesn't need flash X-ray machine and other things. And they will use the gun type. However, gun type, you need more amount of uranium, whereas for implosion device, you need less amount of plutonium. You see the difference? And so they can easily obtain nuclear material quite enough to create a big explosion using a gun-type material. That's one big barrier. And what is another barrier that the terrorists have, and how could we block them? We'll talk about that. Before that, I want you to see the next PowerPoint slide. That is Davy Crockett. It's a okay. The weapons we have, The big ones are called strategic weapons. Strategic weapons are weapons, strategic nuclear weapons. These are weapons to destroy a city, huge, big ones. So these are the ones launched through intercontinental ballistic missile. I taught you this in class, ICBM. Rockets, remember? You saw that command and control, right? And these are strategic nuclear weapons. Whereas tactical nuclear weapons, write it down, tactical, is a much smaller rocket. Smaller like what? It will be like 6 feet, not like a 3 building height. You saw that huge rockets, ICBM. And it'll have nuclear material in the front, small amount. And that could be used in a battlefield against a military division coming at you, like 10,000 people or 20,000 people. You could fire those. Those are called Davy Crockett. It's named after American patriot Davy Crockett. And that could be fired like in a stand. You could put it in a stand and fire the rocket, and it could go and hit the enemies invading your army. That's tactical nuclear weapons. Why did I mention that here? Because terrorists could use a tactical weapon which is more easily transportable in other things. And still, remember, they could get their staged and their aim of all the media's attention. Now, what about the next one? How do we stop this? This is too much, Professor. We need to stop it. So let's talk about some methods they use to stop. One simple one, whether there's a material coming into city, if you stop a truck, how do you identify? They are emitting radiation, okay? The radioactive material inside the bomb is emitting radiation. So you could use Geiger counter. You see me with the picture in the PowerPoint slide, taking the Geiger counter. That's the Geiger counter. I'm smiling with it. You could take it around and flash it on the nuclear material. Or if a truck has a nuclear material, truck has a nuclear material, you want to find whether the nuclear material is inside or not by taking this device, which will show you through checking the radiation amount coming out of the truck. And if the arrow, the meter goes for right, you know you're close to your target, and then you stop the truck and check it inside thoroughly. Okay, there are other detectors, passive and active detectors. I'm walking through. You might see in the PowerPoint slide photograph. Those are, you might find it in bridge like our George Washington Bridge and other bridges which is coming into the city. They keep it on the side so that if the truck is passing by, the radioactivity, they can pick it up and to prevent. Okay, let's talk about preventions in more detail. Write it down. The first way to prevent is that we're going to talk about like 7-8 points. So I will write it down. First point, you see it in the PowerPoint slides. And you could write down there as well if you want to print it out. Multiple systems locks. The first one is multiple systems locks. What is multiple system locks? That is called PAL, permissible accessible links. Permissible accessible links. So you have a password for your email. Similarly, a nuclear weapon could be created with 6-digit or 8-digit numbers, and you have to press those numbers to get access to that weapon. And if those numbers were wrong a few times, like a password you're trying to log into your computer, that nuclear weapon could be completely deactivated and the terrorists might not be able to use it. Not all countries' permissible accessible link, PAL, number system will be there because it's extra money you have to spend on top of the weapon to protect. So, for example, the United States, after 9/11, tried to protect any nuclear terrorism. The George Bush administration gave money to Pakistan, about $100 million, to put PAL links. Well, Pakistan put those weapons in an area and protected with not PAL, but padlocks, right? So not all countries take the measures to protect it with PAL links of multiple system locks. Okay. The second one is bilateral treaty. Bilateral. Bi means two. That means two countries to reduce the stockpile. One is Russia, another one is United States. Why? Because these two countries, as you saw in the proliferation video, have tested more weapons and also have more weapons. Even now, thousands of weapons they have. Other countries have only hundreds of strategic nuclear weapons. This country's thousand could destroy the world multiple times and let the dust crumble. So you could create a bilateral treaty to reduce the stockpile further. In fact, the stockpile is reduced drastically. It used to be 14,000, 15,000 strategic nuclear weapons in the United States, now around like 4,000, 5,000. So we have, through treaties, have reduced, but still could reduce. And some politicians, like President Obama, goal is to achieve in the future someday zero, which is, I don't see it in the nearby future, but we could all hope for it, a world without nuclear weapons. Okay. And the third one is, write it down, nuclear attribution. What do you mean nuclear attribution? See, we talk about terrorists getting a bomb or a nuclear material from another country. What if there's a country B doesn't like country A, and the country B gives the weapon to the terrorist and the terrorist explodes it in country A? Because if the B directly attacks country A is going to nuke the country B back or attack back because they know who attacked them. But if it's coming to terrorists, you don't know where the terrorists got the nuclear material, right? Right. But there's a technology called nuclear attribution. What it does is scientists could go to the place where the nuclear bomb is exploded, after the explosion, obviously, and collect the nuclear materials because it's sprayed around, the radioactive material spilled on that place, and test it and find what is the origin of that country where this was mined. And so every nuclear material could be attributed, that means pointed towards the country which gave the nuclear material or the weapon to the terrorists. So that's nuclear attribution. So then the countries wouldn't dare to give it to a terrorist. B won't give the weapons to a terrorist to attack A. Are you following? Okay. Then the fourth one is FMCT. Fissile, F-I, I'll write it down on the board. Fissile Material Cutoff Treaty. You know how to spell cutoff and treaty, but I'll write fissile. Fissile, material, you know how to spell. Cut off, one word, both those words, cut off, treaty. FMCT they call, FMCT. That is, fissile material is this uranium and highly enriched uranium-235 or the plutonium. These materials should be, when you create a treaty between countries, say country A and country B are creating a treaty, they have already nuclear weapons, they could decide to reduce the amount of enriched nuclear material they have in their countries. Why is that important? Because then they could, if they have less amount of fissile material, that won't fall into the hands of terrorists because they could keep it accountable. If there's a lot of material they have, fissile material, then some of them, if it's gone missing, as you saw in the documentary, you wouldn't know what went missing or not. So fissile material cutoff treaty to reduce the amount of material they have. Okay, that's 4. Fifth one, International Convention in Eliminating Nuclear Terrorism. Yeah, it's surprising that we still don't have a working convention to eliminate nuclear terrorism. That you need another 22 countries to ratify the treaty. You know what a ratification means? Okay. In the United States, ratify means approve, the word. In the United States, the US president could sign a treaty with another country, but him signing the treaty alone will not create a binding contract with another country. The US Senate have to ratify, approve it with a 2/3, okay, out of 100 senators, 2/3 have to approve it. Only then the treaty is in effect. So there are 22 countries which haven't ratified. The leaders might have signed, but their parliaments or the leaders, different countries have different ways of ratifying, haven't ratified. So if they don't ratify, then there is no international elimination of nuclear terrorism is not there yet, fully on force. Now, next one, material safeguard. Material safeguard. We talked about to protect the nuclear weapons, but we also need to protect the material. Yes, we already talked about fissile material cutoff. That is to reduce the amount of material the countries produce. This is to safeguard. Safeguard means putting guards, men or women, soldiers to guard it, and also to safeguard using technological methods. Like in the US, you would not be able to go in and get the nuclear material easily, even though there were two dramatic incidents of people inside nuclear material places. And that's a different story. We don't want to go in there. So that shows how vulnerability. However, the material safeguard has to be with technologies from CCTV cameras to storing the material in a secure places that it will be not easily accessible to everyone or a normal person who's trying to steal. Now, next one is NPT Treaty. NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. I have talked about this in detail in my previous classes, so I'm not going to go into the treaty, but the goal of this point is to strengthen the treaty because there are cheaters, including North Korea, who cheated on the treaty, right? So we want to strengthen the treaty and make sure those who have signed it don't cheat on the treaty by having what? Regular checkups. And like what now we have checkups with Iran. Iran agreed for a contract. We'll talk about that later. And that Iran, later means in future lectures, that Iran made a contract with the European countries and the United States during Obama administration for a regular check, inspectors going in and checking on their plants to make sure that Iran is not making a nuclear weapon. And they are a signatory to the NPT Treaty. So to sign the treaty and not to be able to be cheated, there should be, Ronald Reagan had a statement, trust but verify. He used a Russian proverb to say that, trust but verify. So you could trust them, they signed the treaty, but to also to verify that they are following what they signed. Okay. The last one, eighth one, stop criticizing others and start acting. Because this is from a scholar who talks about how the United States go around the world pontificating that others shouldn't have a nuclear weapon. What about us doing? Because this is the question I asked as well to the British Prime Minister. It's in YouTube. I'll put the link there for the class. That what is the US doing in reducing its stockpile? What is UK doing? Because these are countries which are countries originals, as the Prime Minister says, who had the weapon, and they don't want, they're the like policemen, they don't want other countries to have. I understand that, but what are we doing in reducing the amount of weapons, the quantity and quality of the weapons, these detrimental weapons we have? Okay. Now I'm going to move on to nuclear terrorism is over. Nuclear ethics, write it down. It's a whole different chapter. While I talk about nuclear ethics, I mentioned the detrimental weapons, right? Use of, why? If you ask most people, they will say nuclear weapons, they're bad. That means a morality judgment. Why are they bad? What do the scholars who study ethics think of nuclear weapons? Okay, why would nuclear weapons be considered bad? Can you answer that? If it is a classroom in person, I will go around and ask you to see what is your thought process on thinking whether if it is bad, and if so, why. Let's see what the scholars, some of them say, why it is considered bad. Okay, let's see, when an explosion happens, nuclear weapon, about 50% of it goes to the power of explosion itself, the burst. And about like 25-30% of the energy is converted into fire and burning. another 5-10% to radiation. So now if you look at it, this weapon, it's not just explosion like a conventional bomb, which are permitted in warfare, but it also creates burning, fire, and chemical. Okay, first thing, chemical weapons are banned internationally. You can't use it in warfare. Why? Well, the simple argument is that it is a weapon which could excruciatingly painful to kill. It's not like a bullet or anything. It's a torturous way to kill combatants or civilians. Okay, and so they are banned. Chemical weapons are banned. But why is nuclear weapons not banned, even though they do the similar job? You saw in Hiroshima documentary or in the class lectures that many people after Hiroshima bombing, when they jumped into the river, that their skin peeled off and floated, right? So it's like as brutal as a chemical weapon in part of its effect, and it's not banned. And another part of the nuclear weapon is radiation. So even those who survive, they're genetically marred, and that genetics are passed on to the future generation, right? And the future generation wasn't responsible for the war. So it is ethically wrong to do something, a violation of a people who weren't born at the time of the war, right? And dropping a bomb environmentally affects that area, and that also affects future people who are linked to this, right? Linked to what? Linked to being born in that society where the bombing was dropped. And so it is not right for countries to use it ethically, the argument against them. Okay. Now, what else? Write down laws of war in under nuclear ethics. Laws of war, LAWS of war. You're going to watch a whole documentary on it. I would have shown it if it is in classroom. It's called FOG, FOG, Fog of War. So you would understand. I teach a whole class on ethics of war, laws of war, but here it's a short discussion, so you understand that how this laws of war, the laws of war was not followed like if you go 2,000 years ago, not so much. Some did have magnanimous things. I don't want to go into the history of laws of war, but it's the most recent development in humanity through international law. And Hugo Grotius is the father of international law. He has written on laws of war. And then Thomas Aquinas. And later, you look at Walzer. He is a Princeton professor who wrote Laws of War. And here, pertaining to nuclear weapons, we're going to discuss a couple of aspects of the laws of war to show how nuclear weapons are bad. So when I'm talking about laws of war, there are 3 stages in laws of war. That is just simple. Before going to war, while in war, after war. So before going to war is called jus ad bellum. You see it? Yeah, Latin. Jus means bellum means war. Justice at war. Jus is justice. It sounds like J, but it's Latin. Jus ad bellum. Justice at war. Before going to war. And jus in bello. That means when justice in war, while in your war, are you conducting morally? Okay? And then jus post bellum. That means justice after war. We're not going to talk about justice after war so much, but we're going to talk about the jus ad bellum, jus in bello more, especially in nuclear ethics context. Jus ad bellum is a leader should decide whether to go to war or not, whether war is the right thing, and before for any problem, right? Remember we talked about Clausewitz. War is a continuation of politics by other means. So to achieve a political goal, a military goal has to be achieved. We talked about it in class, right? And so similarly, when you see jus ad bellum, here in the United States, the president decides to use a bomb in battlefield or not. In battlefield or not. And him deciding it, there should be a factor called proportionality. Proportionality. What is proportionality? Proportionality means that, let me give you an example, then you know. So we all going out to a coffee shop, sitting there as students and me as professor. We are having coffee, and suddenly a guy who is sitting in the next table, who's drunk, say, and he says mean, nasty things, even racial things. Would you just suddenly get up and stab him with a knife or shoot him? And if you did, would you be able to defend yourself in a court of law saying it's a self-defense? No. Well, if you're doing that, I'm not going out with you for any coffee because that's a scary thought. But he won't do it because he is crazy. You don't do disproportionate response of attacking him with a knife or even a worse gun. Similarly, in warfare, you don't drop a nuclear bomb for a small, say they shot down one of country A's fighter jet. A B shot down country A's fighter jet. You won't go and drop a nuclear bomb. A won't go and drop a nuclear bomb on B. That's a disproportionate response. Yes, in all-out war cases in Japan, they did drop, but there is still ethical debate that's going on whether what Truman did is right or wrong. So at Truman's decision, he said he didn't lose sleep for dropping the bomb. He didn't. But many scholars, including the scientists who created the bomb, felt morally wrong for not only just dropping the bomb, but dropping the bomb and killing civilians. So it wasn't a proportionate response. Okay? Next one is, in war, you decide and you're getting in war. And so Truman decided to drop the bomb. In war, civilian immunity, write it down. This is key. Civilian immunity means that is the core of justice in war. You discriminate. What do you mean discriminate? Isn't a discrimination bad? Yes, in our society, discrimination, we should not discriminate based on color, race, gender, etc. But in war, morally it is right to discriminate. In society, it's morally wrong to discriminate. But in war, you have to discriminate between who and who. Between a combatant, a soldier, and a non-combatant who is not a soldier, civilian. Why do you do the discrimination? Why can't you kill civilians? Can you answer it? Yeah, think about it. Why soldiers are fine to kill? Why not civilians? Well, some of you would say that civilians didn't sign up for this. They didn't. They are not wearing a uniform, ready to kill and be killed. They signed up for it, and so you have the right to kill soldiers in a war. Soldiers have the right to kill another soldier. Similarly, he has the right to fight for his country and die. But civilians didn't, so you cannot kill the civilians, right? And using a nuclear bomb, write down, it's important, underline this. It's a weapon of indiscriminate terror. It's a weapon, quote unquote, it's a weapon of indiscriminate terror. That means it doesn't discriminate between combatant and a non-combatant. It is designed for mass slaughter of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, with these thermonuclear weapons. So those weapons should not be used in warfare, according to some people, because it's ethically immoral. And the last one, us post bellum. Usually us post bellum means after war is over, they punish, morally you have to punish the war criminals, those who violated the laws of war in the us ad bellum stage or us in bello stage. So violation, the war criminals have to be punished. Now here's the question. The United States have punished war criminals in Germany, Nazis, and in Japan. Many of them were put to death. Okay, And one of the generals, Japanese general Masaharu Hama, said, I am not put to death because I did anything wrong. I'm put to death because I lost the war, he said. It's an important point to think about because, yes, Japanese did war crimes. So did US, according to some scholars. Because we dropped the bomb, we did firebombing and killed hundreds of thousands of people, soldiers. You're going to watch the Fog of War documentary that goes along with this lecture to understand. So if we did that, why isn't any of the US soldiers or generals or even political leaders were punished? Is it because we won the war? Masaharu Hama has a question before he dies for us to ponder and think. So the victors get to go away doing whatever brutality, right? So end justifies the means. What does that end justify the means? That means consequentialism. Write it down. Consequentialism. I moved on from the loss of war. Consequentialism. You know consequences, right? And then write Tialism. Consequentialism is, that is, end justifies the means. If I drop the bomb, yeah, it might be bad, but I bring the war to a faster closing. So there's a good coming out of it. Will that justify bringing the war to faster closing rather than fighting a protracted long war? So Truman would say, like, well, we dropped the bomb and then they surrender. Otherwise, the war would have gone on for a long time. So will the dropping the bomb is justified because end is good? Yes, some scholars would say consequentialism is correct. But if you are deontological, the opposite of consequentialism, deontology, I'm going to spell it for you. And this is based on Immanuel Kant's deontology. Deontology, G-Y. Deontology means duty bound. Immanuel Kant said, you don't do bad in the world. I'm making it in simple language. You don't do bad, period. It's not like, oh, I will do this bad so that I'm trying to achieve good, more good. When you might not achieve good. You don't know for sure you will achieve good. And you will end up doing just bad. So if everybody starts doing bad to achieve good, they might be having more bad done on this world. So to not to do bad and to stay there is a better way. So to not do bad as a duty. Okay, you following? So Kant, that's Immanuel Kant, K-A-N-T, his name. Immanuel, you know how to spell. Kant is a philosopher. Immanuel Kant's idea is opposite of this consequentialist idea. You don't do bad. And here's another thing. Counter force. What is counter force? Counter force is, that is, nuclear weapons pointed towards military targets. But then, say country A is putting the nuclear weapons, missiles targeting country B's military targets, and that is counter force. Then the country B might escalate it to put the weapons pointed towards the cities, public. That is counter value. And when they're doing counter value, what do you think country A is going to do? They're also going to change their missiles to deter, because people are more valuable. And it's scary that the cities will be bombed. So the counter force is actually very immoral because you're trying to deliberately kill civilians or threatening to kill civilians. Even threatening is bad, according to some scholars, ethical scholars. How? Well, how about this? One scholar said that was an interesting analogy. He said, we want to prevent car crashes. Everybody driving rash will create car crashes. If you tie the baby in the bumper of the car, of course, the baby is not going to know. It's like infant. They'll be like, hanging there. And you drive around, people will be very careful driving because they don't want to crash and kill the baby. Is that okay? Morally okay? It's not. Why? Even though the baby might not know, even though you could say like end justifies while it reduces the car crashes, even putting a baby as a means to achieve the end is wrong. Immanuel Kant said, humans cannot be used as a means to achieve an end. Humans are the end. Humans should not be used as a means to an end. So threatening people, if you dare to escalate the war, I will nuke your people, is a threat on the lives of people. That's immoral. What do religious people say about this? In fact, there's a whole books written on it, on religious scholars' view on ethics of nuclear weapons. And if you read my ebook on ethics of nuclear weapons, it goes into the details. Here I will just refer a couple of points. And Hinduism, according to the Dharma, doesn't allow nuclear weapons. Christianity, Catholics, doesn't allow consequentialism, is morally wrong. And Islam forbids using weapons of mass destruction based on not to destroy environment and create waste. And even Judaism, a rabbi have given a statement why, according to Judaism, nuclear weapons are bad. So there are many religious arguments against weapons of mass destruction, especially nuclear weapons, right? It's the largest weapons of mass destruction man has created. So they're morally wrong. Let's move on to talk about difference between preventative war and preemptive war. Preemptive war is morally correct. Preventative is wrong. Oh, let me spell. You know how to spell preventative. But preemptive, the talk. So preemptive is when somebody is about to attack you, and then every second you wait that risks your life, then you do an attack. That's okay. That is morally right because you didn't start it. Whereas preventative is, say I'm going to gym, I'm working out, I'm getting strong, and you look at me, well, Hill is getting strong. Maybe one day he will come and attack me. I better attack him before he gets much stronger. That's preventative. And that's morally wrong because you don't know that I will come and attack you. What are the chances? So you are starting the war. I am not starting the war. So, but in nuclear weapons, especially with the nuclear missiles, you don't know when the attack will come. So it brings the preventative and preemptive to a closer, the gap between them is very less, they argue. Especially Bush administration argued that. So Saddam Hussein is having nuclear weapons. He didn't have. Having nuclear weapons puts us in a threat that you don't want a nuclear bomb going off in Manhattan or in the US, creating a mushroom cloud over the United States, Condoleezza Rice said. So she was the Secretary of State under President Bush. And so we should take action because the longer we wait, once you have the nuclear weapon and put it in the bomb in the missile, you don't know when the attack is going to come because he's not going to bring the military forces to your border and you will have a chance for a preemptive attack. So we have to do a preventative attack. Even though it's immoral preventative, there's no difference in a nuclear age between preemptive and preventative because there's no time gap between it, is what's the argument. Well, some scholars completely don't agree with that, don't agree with it. Because you could prevent, we'll talk about how to take out missiles. Like now, we're not going into North Korea. He has tested missiles. He has tested nuclear bombs, but we won't go in there. That's not because of ethical reason, because of military reasons. We'll talk about that when we talk about missile defense. But as of now, just understand we're talking about ethics of nuclear weapons. Preventative is morally wrong because you could go and start war with around the world and drop nuclear weapons, assuming that other person is going to use the weapon against you. Preemptive is different. It is okay. A good example Walzer gave of preemptive, not nuclear, but preemptive war is Israel's. Six-Day War, because all the Arab forces were coming around them to crush, and then Israel took the first strike because they were about to be attacked. The longer they wait, it's dangerous for them, Israel. Okay, so now we move away from ethics. I want to talk about few other things. That is, one is proliferation. I talked about horizontal proliferation, vertical proliferation, all those things. In horizontal proliferation, I want to talk about one character's story. This guy's name is AQ, A for apple, Q for queen, Khan, Khan, AQ Khan. Who is he? He is considered the father of Islamic bomb. Remember, father of atomic bomb is Robert Oppenheimer, American. This is Islamic bomb. What did he do? Why are we talking about him? Let's talk about him, and then I'll tell you why. It's pertaining to segue to the ethics. Ethics, we talked about ethics of nuclear weapons. What he did with the nuclear technology is what is the point of discussion. Okay. Who is he? He was a PhD material science metallurgist who was working in Uranco. Uranco is a company which is in, hang on one second, let me finish this. Uranco in Amsterdam, in Netherlands. Uranco, Uranium Enrichment Corporation. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? That's a Dutch company. That's why enrichment, uranium enrichment, how the enrichment we talked about, like a coffee fluid going through. Yeah, uranium enrichment company. So he was working for the company with a PhD, and he was married to a Dutch citizen as well. And Pakistan didn't have a nuclear bomb at the time. So he would go and spy on the technology where he is working on. He will take down notes in Urdu, his language, mother tongue. So if other people working there looks at it, they wouldn't understand what he's taking notes. He completely took many of the documents, secret ones, to his home, and he was trying to give it to Pakistan government to make the bomb. And he was having a party at home, and some of the couples from his company were there at his home, and they saw some of the files which he had on his table shouldn't be there because these are high classified secret materials, and why is he having it there? So one of them informed a higher official, and the higher official, before taking action, AQ Khan packed everything, left for holiday to Pakistan, never came back to Amsterdam. And he met with the prime minister, obviously, of Pakistan, and told them that he could help them make the bomb. And remember, Pakistan, Bhutto's father, has said that we will eat grass or we will save money in every way, but we're going to go nuclear. They were determined to go nuclear. And they took his advice, created the enrichment process, and that's how he went nuclear. Now, the first time a Muslim country went nuclear. But he didn't stop there. He did not stop there. He sold the nuclear technology to the countries with highest bidders. It's like selling shoes in eBay or something like that. He gave the technology to North Korea and to Iran and to Syria and to Libya, okay, Muammar Gaddafi. All these peoples got their technology from him because he got paid. And now you might say, why didn't the United States government or other West didn't try to stop? They put pressure in Pakistan administration to arrest him. They kept him in a house arrest for a little while and then let him go because he is very, very influential in his country because of what he made the bomb possible for Pakistan, one. Two, the money he made through selling this nuclear technology to other countries, he was generous to weddings and others of peoples. So he is very popular. So had it in a house arrest for a little while and then let him go. And these technologies which spread to these countries proliferated, at least in two countries. North Korea now have the bomb. Iran went on the path. We'll talk about Iran. There's much to talk about Iran. And Muammar Gaddafi tried to create, he bought centrifuges, everything which was coming in a ship. And Americans tried to get the ship stopped in another country's port and found and confiscated all those materials. So Gaddafi was not able to go nuclear. But let's talk about what he did is wrong, right? Because giving the technology and proliferating it to the world, not caring about the safety aspects of it. Let's talk about what countries like Israel did when proliferation like this happens. So 1981, write it down, OSIRAC option, OSIRAC. Option. There was a conservative prime minister in power in Israel, and Saddam Hussein of Iraq got a nuclear reactor from France. You might think, why would France give him a nuclear reactor? Well, remember, every country has the right to make electricity production according to the NPT. But they could divert that nuclear material used in the electricity production to make a bomb. We talked about that as well. So Saddam Hussein got this nuclear reactor, which made Israel worry a lot, because if Saddam goes to nuclear, he wouldn't hesitate to use it on Israel. So Israel did a secret mission. They were training their pilots. Okay, Israel got its independence in 1948. It's a very small new country. It's about the size of Israel, New Jersey, right? The entire country, and the population is about New York City's population. It's a small country. They're training their best pilots without telling them what they're getting trained for in the new flights, new kind of aircrafts, war aircrafts they got from the U.S., and they sent them off on a mission. Right before they were about to take off, they told them where they're going to go and what is their mission, which is to bomb the Iraqi's nuclear reactor, so that before it reaches criticality, then they could take some nuclear material from it to make bomb, divert it. So these planes went, it's an amazing story. It's hard to explain it in a video in a short time, but Saddam had the nuclear reactor just 17 kilometers away from Baghdad, the capital, and he had all guards. So these planes went there when the guards were there in the lunchtime. Okay, otherwise they have anti-aircraft. They will shoot at the planes, and they had balloons floating around, which when you hit the balloons, it'll explode. So the planes will explode along. It's to protect anybody from bombing, because they know there's a possibility of Israel attacking it. The Israel planes went over the balloons, and they had to nosedive towards it and drop their bomb, which they're carrying. These are heavy bombs, and you know, nuclear reactor has about 6 feet thick concrete, and then a lead 6 inches. You have to demolish that, and then you got to hit the core where the nuclear material is. So the first plane drops the bomb, and you have to turn around, and before the bomb explodes, have to go and fly. The next plane comes. There are like 6-7 planes went. They hit one by one, and completely destroyed the nuclear power plant, which was surrounded by homes. None of the homes was demolished. By the time the lunch soldiers came running and started shooting, so totally there were only 1 French serviceman died, and like 10 Iraqis died. It was a clean-cut operation. Around the world, many countries condemned in the UN that it was a preventative war waged by Israel. And UN Security Council and the New York Times, the LA Times, everybody criticized Israel's operation. But Israel's prime minister took a decisive action to prevent the possibility of Saddam Hussein going nuclear. And President Ronald Reagan, when he saw the photographs of the destruction of the power plant, he said, boys will be always boys. He didn't condemn or criticize anything. Now, why did I say this story to you? It is important in the context of Iran now possibly going nuclear, right? So this story, 1981, is not the only time Israel took action to stop the potential enemy potentially going nuclear. Another country which it did in 2007 is against Syria. Against Syria, there's a book called Raid on the Sun. Against Syria, with the US help, CIA, they found a nuclear reactor. You know, a nuclear reactor needs a lot of water to cool. And so they were built near a river, right? There was huge pipes going in. So from satellite, you could tell those pipes are taking in large amount of water from the river and cooling. And they said it's not a nuclear reactor, Syria said. But CIA and others said, no, this is a nuclear reactor. And then North Korean scientists, North Koreans who already made the bomb, were helping Syrians working in the nuclear power plant to make the bomb possible for Syria. Imagine if Assad, who is having the civil war, killing its own people, have a bomb now. Do you really want him to have a bomb? No. So Israel went on a raid, and of course, they know Israel might come to attack that. So they have clearly radars to make sure if planes enter their zone, they will know. But Israelis used high tech to hack the photo. So it's like a photograph of what the current will show for a little while. But meanwhile, actually the planes are in their airspace. It will not be detected. The radars they used was a Russian technology. So the Israelis went in during that gap they created in their radar technology and went and bombed this and completely make sure that they don't make a bomb. Now, Iranians, knowing all this history, have built their nuclear centrifuges and the process enrichment plant, everything for underground into the mountains. So if you bomb, if it's in the open surface, you could bomb. If it's underground, how are you going to bomb, right? So they know Israel might do this. However, there's bunker busting bombs, which the United States have, not Israel so much, could penetrate for many feet underground and go and explode. And of course, the US have to give that to Israel to do that, or US himself has to do it. That's a totally different conversation. So now it's almost an hour, so I want to stop the lecture here. Ethics of nuclear weapons is a very controversial or debatable, highly debatable topic between the people who wanted to have nuclear weapons and the people who don't believe in nuclear weapons. And the debate continues, and especially in the usage. And we also focused on nuclear terrorism today. So I hope you take this knowledge and watch the video of Fog of War together and then answer the questions. Good luck. I'll see you next week.